Truth and Tea with the Urban Evangelist. Welcome to Truth and Tea with the Urban Evangelist.
It's always a pleasure to welcome you back to Truth and Tea. I am the Urban Evangelist, your host, and this is the podcast that filters life through faith. Each time you come back here, it tells me that you are simply hungry and thirsty for more. Today, I have a very exciting and interesting guest joining me. She's going to be pouring from her cup, on the topic of influencing. If it's one thing that God has created us to do, it is to influence, others, to influence generations. And we live, in a world where the word influence is thrown around so much, but today we unpack it in a very special way. And with me is Tisa, the trendsetter. Welcome to Truth and Tea, Tisa.
Howdy. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So this is me trying to keep a straight face.
Yes, because it's going to be one of those interviews.
And we actually go a long way back. This is like my big sister, really.
Yes. I think you were 13, Maisa.
Yeah, when we first met.
Yes.
Yeah. And she's the big sister that sometimes we have to big sister.
Yes, and you always have, eh? And every time it's like, no, but it's like every single time I would have to answer to your questions. You and Melingo said it was like the strangest thing. But
who's the older one here, right?
yes. I was one of those.
So Tisa, today we're talking about something that you do so easily, so effortlessly, and it's something that you've actually managed to build a brand out of.
Correct.
But first things first, just a lighter question, just to loosen ourselves up a bit.
Go ahead.
What is the first social media app you open and why?
It definitely has to be Facebook.
Facebook.
And let me tell you why. It's because I am so obsessed with algorithms. And because I'm now like a corporate brand influencer, so I want to see the numbers, and then I want to make orders. So for me, it's definitely Facebook.
Yeah.
And, people want a response, you know what I mean? So when you put out content and you find that people have, written maybe more than a sentence, people just want to see that you're there and it's not a page that's managed by somebody else. So it's definitely Facebook. It's an addiction, an obsession, but it's where the money is for me. So it definitely has to be Facebook.
I'm going to get back to you on those two words, addiction and obsession.
Yeah.
I asked that because today, coincidentally, I came across a meme first thing when I just opened my phone. And it said, some of you, like before you even establish that you can walk, you're already on Instagram. Like you don't know if your legs are working, but you're reaching out, to go on Instagram. So I thought, okay, I'm going to ask Tisa that. And you've mentioned, you're very big on algorithms, numbers. How do you draw the line between keeping a healthy check on numbers and not, like you said, falling into like an obsessive behavior when it comes to numbers and them not performing the way you'd like them to perform?
You really, because what I've done, and I'm so lucky that I have a background that kind of makes me understand, followers and how they behave, because people are into likes and, reactions and comments, how many people have shared my content. It really isn't about that. It's about the two people that have seen it and how they will behave towards your content. You won't get that face value when you just open, Facebook, but when you dig deeper, you kind of understand, and when you look through your content, you kind of know what works and what people are excited about. Because if you focus on the numbers, because you have to understand, influencers equally get influence. They start to think, but I'm not in the millions. I haven't crossed. And then sometimes you know how it is, because you started way after I did. And just to get those numbers getting bigger and bigger, it's such a huge challenge. And it gets depressing at some point, because you're thinking, what is it for? Like, is anyone even seeing my content?
Yeah.
So you have to see past, the face, what people see. You have to understand how do people feel afterwards? Like, how do they react? Do they dislike? I'm sure you've had instances where somebody has just, hide this post, where people just say, this is not something that I like. But I'm not excited with numbers. I'm more excited with what the behaviors of the people that are following me.
All right.
And if that behavior can be interpreted into income or engagement, then it's a win for me. So numbers do very little to excite me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not the reality for a lot of people.
No, it isn't.
First of all, like everybody is online. I mean, whether it's a business, whether it's churches. I mean, as the urban evangelist, I'm online. That's where I'm doing my ministry. And sometimes numbers and likes and reactions are part of the distraction. So much so that it's tempting at times to even curate content for likes and for reactions.
Drama.
But, oh, it's dramatic.
Drama. You know, you want to, because you tell yourself, you know, half the people that have opened Facebook pages have noticed that they were very private, or they go through struggles, you know what I mean? And probably in their childhood they had diaries where they want to communicate and share. Then you open a page and then suddenly you're thinking, it's a borderline. Do I want to be popular, or do I want to be relevant and consistent? So you play around with that. And an age group also matters. You know how the younger influencers behave, and how, you know, some of us, I'm not that old, but you know, I put myself there.
Are you,
you know,
still in the youth bracket?
I'm still in the youth bracket.
Are you now?
I tell myself every single morning, it's like, you are young, you're beautiful.
Young at heart. Just playing with you. Yeah.
You know, so
but there's never been instances where you've felt the pressure to try and curate your content
because
differently.
I didn't. You have to understand, when I opened my page, it wasn't because I was saying, oh, let me get to Facebook so I become an influencer, so I become a brand ambassador of corporate, you know, events, like I do MC. When I started, you know how I started.
Others don't.
Okay.
I do.
I need to share.
You need to share.
I was down and under. I had my fourth child, and he was unplanned. And if you know, and I'm one of those people that is very organized, and you know, my failure to focus. I believe I have ADHD. My mother just called it being naughty, but I just couldn't see anything to completion. So I felt like my educational background and failure to complete university kind of made me like I had to. Oh, I was always running to catch up. When I became a mother, it kind of brought a different kind of relevance to everything that was going on. But you know, motherhood and the economy and everything else, it kind of became a struggle. So when I got pregnant with my last baby, I say last because we're done. Tubes are tight.
Okay.
We're not breeding anymore. But when I had my last one, Dumisani was only like 6 months. I couldn't tell anyone but you. I called you and said, this is what I'm going through. And you were so encouraging. I think you know, Maiza, how you are. You're like, let's pray over it. And then you're like the voice of reason. So I kind of held on to that. And then you were pregnant, so you were going to have your baby shower. And I had just given birth, so I wasn't looking the part. You know, sometimes, you know, my skin was still recovering
exactly.
from
Postpartum period. Yeah.
So then you said you were going to have this baby shower. And you know, you and your events, you have so many people that love you, so you have so many friends, then your events are big, Maiza. And because you look beautiful when you're pregnant, it's the strangest thing anyways. So you said you need to MC. I said, I'm not going to MC. I've never done it before. She said, but Tisa, every single event, you're the life of the party. Like even with the twins' birthdays, you know, I'll be there trying to just get things going, getting games going. It's like, you just need to do it. There's a way
that's something you're good at, like kids, hence the teaching background as well.
Yes. So it was easy for me. But you see, children don't judge. So it was easy for me in my teaching career, you know, teaching kindergarten for 9 years. You know, kids don't judge. But when you said, okay, now take that energy and we're going to have, you know, guests and I need you to, it's going to be formal, but we want it fun. I was frightened because I said, but then, like I said, it's different when it's coming from you, because over the years, when you say something, even before we knew that you had the gift, because you have the gift, when you say something, people kind of believe that you have a message. You know what I mean? Because there's so many things I wanted to be, and so many places where I felt, okay, this is my lowest point, but you came out and said, do this. It's going to, you know, this is what you do, this is going to be exciting. And I believed you, you know. So I said, let me give it a try. And we had the baby shower and microphone. And, you know, I wasn't looking so good, but I felt so beautiful. And it was such a huge event. And I said, I remember you saying, this is it. This is what you're good at. Like the feedback was excellent. But I said, how do I become a master of ceremony if I just have Maiza's event? And you are very private and I'm very public. So I said, I can't really share too much. But how do I then get my next gig? You know, so I had to now develop content, because Zambians believe, I won't really want to say Zambians, but I think my market then believed to be a master of ceremonies first, you should not be female.
Yeah,
but yes, it was more male-dominated.
Male-dominated,
yes.
exactly.
But then you should...
And that you should be a comedian.
Exactly.
Did you run into that?
I did,
Yeah.
and I so even my content, but I'm always funny, but I'm just not a comedian, because being a comedian is it's a whole different art, and I didn't feel, but I was pressurized to be funny.
Yeah.
And I told myself, I said, wait a minute, already my has set a standard for me, you know what I mean, where it's, you know, it's not all the time people want that, you know, loud and jumping on tables, whatever. People want class, but people want entertainment. Mm-hmm. So I told myself, I'm not funny, but I'm entertaining in how I say things and how I just put myself out there. And 2 months after, well, 2 weeks after I did that baby shower, I opened the page. Mm-hmm. And again, I believe it's...
was that the first page that you opened?
It was the first page, and I called it Tisa the Trendsetter.
All right.
There was never a point where I said, I don't think this is going to work. So when I opened the page, it was meant to give me a platform where I can make the videos. Now, here's the thing. What was I going to do? Again, I wasn't looking great. You know, I was living in Chainda. You remember my little house? And I just didn't feel I was packaged enough, but I was so hungry to move me and my family from that place. Mm-hmm. And so I remember I said, Tisa the Trendsetter, you know, it kind of rhymes. Mm-hmm. But you think it just comes from nowhere, but it's like, it's like the whole entire journey, God was trying to make me be in a position where I have no one else to look up to apart from him. Mm. So that everything that pours down is coming. I'm getting goosebumps saying that. That's crazy. But it's, you know what I mean? But that's why it took me. And I said, I need to go to my Inza's house, or my Ngosa's house, because you two had the best kitchens. I said, I need to cook, I need to tell stories. And then I remember saying, but am I going to be consistent in having to come and I'm coming to your house, oh my gosh, I'm coming to your house to do videos. I said, I am here. Yeah. And if I shouldn't see trend setting as being popular and being rich and having it all and being perfect, having the masters. Let me trend by being average. Like, people met me then. They didn't even know I had gone to international schools. Oh, my mom was a diplomat. Like, I don't have a sob story in my childhood. They just thought, here's a woman who just had babies. Yeah. You know, here's a wife, she lives in Chainda. And somebody was saying, people are going to discover that she lives in Chainda. You know, Chainda's obviously the compounds. People will know, like, she's faking it. And somebody would make comments, I would make a live stream, and somebody would say, your chairs are torn. And I say, you know what? God brought me here.
And he's not right there. Okay. You brought up a few interesting things, which I don't want to lose as we, you know, go further into the conversation. So you deliberately attached trendsetter to just give it a different meaning. Yes. It was all about you and just being in your own environment, being comfortable authentic in your skin and being authentic. And this is something that, again, we don't see a lot of online, because I think everyone is trying to put their best foot forward. Correct. We all like to post highlight reels of our lives, you know, which is like the best of what we're able to show out there. Yes. But here's a woman in you. You've just had a baby. You're not feeling confident about yourself. You've mentioned your wardrobe wasn't the best looking, and you know, where home was is not something that
you'd want to show people.
You'd want to show people, exactly. Like, to use your own words. And so much so that you would have easily curated a very different story about yourself.
And I would have struggled.
And struggled. But I remember some of your earlier videos showing you literally cooking pambaula outside in a chitenge, no makeup. Yes. How easy was it for you to just be yourself?
It was easy for me to be myself, but it was very difficult for me to accept that there would be people that would have a problem with it.
Okay, that's where you struggled.
That's where I struggled. People would make comments.
Take us through that.
You know, like, again, because when I made my videos, and I made my videos, I think the one that went viral is the one where I pounded my rings. You know me and my dramatic marriage, my lovely husband. So I was telling people how I pounded my ring and what, and people, the Zambian culture really, like, marriage is not a place you can't pound a ring. You can't have problems and bring them to social media. But I said, if I can make it entertaining, but be honest at the same time, it's going to be good. But then, you know, obviously, you know, I didn't consult family that I was going to start saying all those things. My husband didn't even know the videos I was making. You know, people
so he didn't know about
the videos. He was just thinking it's yet another Tisa project. You know, he would support it, but he's like, let's just give it time. She'll get out of it. So then I started to realize that I had to be answerable to certain content I would put out there. So I said, you know what, let me call the key important people. Let me call your mom was one of them, because she saw the video, she's like, you're crazy, but she knows me. But I had to call my in-laws, I had to just not really get permission, but just kind of let them know that this is what I'm doing, and this is why I'm doing it, but I don't know where it's going to go. But so, yes.
Did they give you the blessing?
Yes, they did. They
Your
said, go ahead.
in-laws?
My in-laws said, for as long as you and your husband are okay with it, and if it's going to bring you, if it's not going to bring any pain and discomfort and, then we're okay with it. Like, it's good you've informed us, but just kind of discuss. If your husband is okay with it, then that's okay. So I picked it up from there. But then, when they sort that out, they come for your wardrobe. Oh, you can't dress like that into your master ceremonies. Or you can't wear that.
And where would they leave these comments on your page?
Yes, they would leave the comments on my page, but because I was in what I called brand awareness, I wanted people to know who I am, but I was failing to focus on what they were saying about who I want to be. So I had to remain very focused and consistent. I had to always constantly remind myself, this is what you're doing it for, this is what you're doing it for. Now, I struggle with asking for help if it's not outside my circles. And, a few events, you'd meet up people, you get big followers, and I always say, Lulu, Hangala, and Mampi. Oh, those two. Because Lulu came and said, listen, you're going to do the game show, because she did it. You're going to do the game, so this is what you're going to do. I remember we went for auditions, and then she kept on emphasizing. She's like, no.
like a break onto TV as well?
Yes, this was my first break onto TV.
Okay.
She said, I struggle, and this is what she said, don't try to sound like a TV presenter, because people already know your voice. Just be Tisa. And she says, this is the struggle I had, because I was packaged at a very young age. I was packaged to look good. Like, I wouldn't get on a bus. People would be like, and I see that. You know what I mean? So she says, just try to be authentic. That's the reason why you stood out. And I took off with it. I'd never been on TV. But when I was at Unza, I studied mass communication. And because there was mass communication, either you go into print or you go into broadcasting. And I wanted to go into broadcasting. And then again, I couldn't see that to completion, but it had been my dream. And there was so much shame in this is who I wanted to be versus who I am now. Because even becoming a teacher was more of, I will still get the audience, but it will be children that won't judge me. So when Lulu came and said, you need to do this show, and I stood and I saw the lights on me, oh my gosh, I just say, God will position you. He will move things around. He will place you where you want to be. And I say, this is where I was meant to be. And I didn't need to go through all that, but if I needed to go through all that to appreciate and soak in this moment and be grateful, because what I lacked growing up was gratitude. I would complain about what I don't have and not what's there. So it was a huge moment for me. And Mampi came with the wardrobe and she said, this is what we do. You can't repeat outfits, so speak to boutiques, speak to people that they can let you either rent out or whatever it is. I design, I can be able to help dress you. It was strange because I always thought, PhD, it's always thrown around. Women want to pull each other down. We forget that they exist.
But then you had two women that came
to your aid, and it was women who didn't know.
It was unsolicited help.
It was unsolicited help, and I kind of felt ashamed. Like, I was one of those people, I don't like women. Women they bring you, but because I was focusing on other people's narrative about their experiences with other women who've hurt them. And then I soaked that in and I said, this is how I should see every other woman. When they're coming for me, they're coming for me and not coming to be with me or support me. So it's small little moments like that now that I'm where I am. And I will say now, that I feel like I'm very successful because I kind of have a very tunnel vision to what it is that I need to get to. But when I opened my page, I had no clue that, I was going to be corporate, I was going to, speak on behalf of the voiceless. And with growth comes responsibility. And I quickly learned that I need to be very responsible with the kind of content I put out there, because I didn't want to be clothed as the what do they call it? A woman of God. Or suddenly I was, in all that I was doing. You know, when people admire you so much, they elevate you to a status that
you on
you're
a
thinking,
pedestal.
it's like, no, I'm not that good. You inspire me, role model. All those words were coming to me, and I didn't want to be part of that because I knew I had scars that would eventually come out. I knew I had flaws. I know somebody would be able to see, it's like, but what she did when she was 25, she hasn't said, you know, so.
What do you find scary about that phrase, you inspire me? Why was it something you shied away from?
Because they hadn't heard my story yet.
Okay.
So I didn't want them to see me on the stage and speaking and saying, I want to be her. I had the responsibility to get my audience, but walk them through my journey.
Okay.
And every single time I post, it's a layer coming out. People are like, you can draw, you're an artist, you can sing, you're a great mom. I didn't want them to love me until they knew who I was. And my fear was, if I tell them who I am all at once, they're not gonna, they'll be
So
like,
it was a fear of rejection.
It was a fear of rejection.
That drove it.
Again, it's something that I've harbored for the longest time. You know, I'm tall, I wear size 8 shoes, you know, I always stand out, I'm loud. I remember, I always give an example of Lusaka July because it's something that I needed to do because I needed to network. And there was the interpretation of a theme. And I was so excited because finally I'd gotten to a place where, you know, the happening people are seeing me. And I said, you know what, let me walk in and be Tisa, let me wear what I want to wear. Mainza, I posted and people were calling me, like, you need to see the comments. For the first time in 5 years, I had a backlash. So I'd gathered people that suddenly were saying, you didn't have to wear that shade of green. And then I said, when did I ever get to a place where I needed human validation? And I realized, I said, you know, it was exciting. Ego plays such a huge role. It's like, they're gonna think. I had my interpretation of it, but it wasn't acceptable, you know? And they called me, Lusaka July, the matron went there, videos. But you could see, even when people spoke in their voice notes and gave reviews, it wasn't negative. It's like, Tisa, we love you, but I think you missed the plot there. But you know what I mean? It wasn't harsh, but then I was labeled the matron. Now this is the thing. The moment the matron word spread out, I said, we're onto something, because people were like, wait, is she really a matron? It's like, yeah, she does kitchen parties as well. Oh my goodness. Then from the entire event, from the best dressed, and women came looking amazing. There was Tisa who wore a chitenge as an interpretation of green. It was a green chitenge, and she was a matron. And I am a matron, and I had pushed that. But then suddenly I was getting calls to be hired to be a matron. So you kind of, you know, what I thought would have been something that would have wounded me secretly, I just embraced it and I said, well, and then we move on, you know.
What are your core values? Because as we're chatting, I'm picking up, you know, the industry advice that you got, you know, say for instance, like never repeat clothes, right down to you saying, you know, people had now begun to notice you and, you know, take note of you. Again, all those are things that are so easy to get caught up in and get lost in, you know, because you've now got this pressure to appear a certain way, to maybe be in certain rooms. What are your core values and how have those helped keep you grounded? Because initially you started off as someone who wanted to just be authentic, be myself, and not play into anyone else's narrative.
Correct.
How have you managed to maintain that? Given that, again, there is a narrative when it comes to influencing, to entertainment,
and when and
to fame and popularity.
Correct, yes. Yeah. And immediately I sensed when I got my fame that people wanted to pit me against other people that were doing something similar to me. Like they would quickly say, oh, in my comment section, they would bash another woman. You know, not like so and so and so and so. And so I suddenly had enemies who had never met, because I didn't respond to it or support it or delete it, because sometimes there's just so many messages. Whoever is being attacked will feel, oh, she kind of likes that this is the comparison that is there. But immediately I told myself, I said, how do I interpret this attention into money, my love for money? And there's nothing wrong, because my prayer point was also, I now have another child. God, this is going to be your child. This baby that's coming is yours. You need to feed this baby. You need to do everything. So when you get blessed with the ability to earn money, you shouldn't see it as, oh, but it's changing you from, I needed to turn my page and my brand into a business. Quickly, I knew that I need to make money. So I was very picky. There were times that I wouldn't have the money and I would be called by people to say, come and do this. Then I would be like, wait a minute. Until I do it at that level, you know what I mean? And I'll give an example, TV stations would call me. And I said, no, I'll wait for ZNBC. Somebody's going to call me. Somebody's going to like my content. So the moment ZNBC called me, again, I sat and the lights were on me. And I remembered, I said, God, you know what I mean? Like I could see the little strings put together. I could see him just weave it in front of my eyes. And he said, I took this away from you so that when you get to this place, you appreciate who I am. And I constantly had to, that feeling was something that pushed me to elevate. But I told myself I would do it with class. I don't have to be available for everybody and everything. So quickly I learned that I need to, do it a certain way. Then my line of work comes with support system. You need to have people. And because, remember, I fear rejection, so you find that half the time I make the little money I make, it's who needs what, I would want to keep them, like, don't leave me, we're going to be big. But my vision, I quickly realized that there were places I would have to go that I would have to leave people behind. It included family, it included friends. And so quickly I learned that I need to kind of separate. If they don't understand what my vision is, I need to kind of just step back and just see other things unfold. And then my relationship with God is so strange, because I speak to him more than I pray. And I worship and I thank him before I'm given. It's become a routine and it works so well. When I need something to be done, I'll be grateful. I remember with the house, again, you came to the house and you prayed for it. I just woke up and I said, I need to move the kids. I need to move the kids. We can't live in this house for years. I got up and I remember I prayed my name.
And this was your house in Chainda?
In Chainda.
Okay.
I woke up and I remember.
So at that point you were earning from the brand that you
From
had
the brand,
created.
I was making sensible income and I was in formal employment. And I remember when I got my job, somebody from HR was telling me, please tell her to deactivate her Tisa the trendsetter, because they're going to find that video she made.
Okay, so just to pause.
Yeah.
So you went from creating the brand,
Creating
then
the
you
brand.
went into formal employment.
Then I went into formal employment.
Okay,
Because at
and
that
then
point,
they had an issue with your page.
no, they thought the bosses would have the issue with the page.
Okay, they wanted you to shut it
They wanted
down.
to shut it down because it could come up.
Okay.
And when it did come up, and when they asked me, says, can you tell us about yourself? I said, I might as well just indicate that this is what I do. But I was very clear to say,
Why
it's
did
not
they
going
want
to...
it shut down though?
Because, again, there's people's perceptions and what they're afraid of.
Okay.
They want to inflict that on you. They want you to be afraid of what they're afraid of. Yeah. But I said, if this is mine, if this is meant to be for me, then let me just be open about it. And I became the trendsetter, and I was in formal employment, as a personal assistant. I think I worked for 6 months. The lady that was on maternity leave came back, and they said, oh, you're going to go into marketing. I said, boss, I can't. I'm sure you just want to fire me, but you just don't know how to say it. So I was thrust into marketing.
Okay.
And I was given a brand. And I said, I have never done any of this. But my bosses said, if you could brand yourself and market yourself, and you've never had, then maybe you want to get the skills and the training so that you can see how, what you do and what the terminology is and how to get. And so I worked for 3 years. I worked and I worked and I enjoyed it and I flourished. I understood social media, everything was coming into place. And my anxiety came. I was not I was not being honest. I started to see that even the kind of content I was putting out, like I'd have to leave work, get into the car, make a video, get back to work. It wasn't
So you
working.
were still balancing your page,
My page
and former employment.
and former employment.
Okay, okay.
And
how did
so-
you actually manage to keep the page? You didn't tell us because they had an issue. They wanted you to shut it down. And I keep bringing this up
Yeah.
because sometimes we feel as though social media is like, a separate entity. It doesn't really affect our lives. But I mean, you found yourself in a situation where your potential employer had come across your social media footprint,
Yes.
and there was a bit of a problem there,
There was a bit of
for
a problem,
them.
yes.
So this shows how much of an extension social media really is of our lives.
And only then did I realize that I need to be very careful with the kind of content I put out, because now I'm employed. I represent this brand, and this is a little sub brand just sitting on the side. But it was very quickly I learned that I had to be respectable, respected.
Okay.
And my content kind of was all over the place. I didn't know what to talk about. I didn't know what to say. I didn't shut it down. And I told myself, I said, if there ever gets a point where they say shut it down, I would have to resign. Very straight on, I said I would have to resign, because I could feel something was coming out. Like, again, people didn't know where it came from.
Yeah.
So no one was going to come and say, you need to do this. But you seek for wisdom. As much as we seek for, can I have good health? You look for clarity, so that the voice that you hear is either God's voice, your voice, and just the people that love you and what they're saying and what is common in what they're communicating. So people say it comes with age, but I really have met very young women, young men who have the clarity at very young age. And I was like, okay, how come I didn't get that then? So it really has nothing to do with, but it has something to do with knowing that if I need to make money, and the kind of money I'm looking to make, and the kind of how big I want to get, how must I behave to get there? So very quickly I learned that, when people criticized why I can't wear this, it's not, like, let's look at it from this way. If I want to be paid 10,000 kwacha for an event, let me try and look like 10,000 worth of a master of ceremony.
Is that how much you get paid for events?
That's pretty much the minimum, yes.
So your minimum is 10,000 kwacha. Is that for an event?
That's a private event.
A private event.
Private
And
event.
corporate?
I actually changed them up. It depends.
What's the
I
highest?
switched them.
What's the highest you've charged for a
I
corporate
have.
event?
Well, for an event, it should be, because it varies. Like brand ambassadorship, the biggest amount I've got is probably 100,000 kwacha. Yes.
Okay,
I
am I
know.
in the wrong profession
I know
here?
you are. Then for
And that's
kitchen
100K
parties,
to do what exactly?
100K to be an influencer, but then to do it over a period of time.
Okay,
But not to be in your face type of advertising,
okay.
but just subtle. And then sometimes, big brands just want to kind of hold on to you.
And
even,
does this include like social media posts?
it includes posts, appearances, but then you have to be very careful, because when all that money starts coming in, immediately start to tell yourself, I need to get this company registered. I need to get my tax in place. I need to get contracts.
I hope I'm not getting you into trouble with these
No, you're
figures
not.
yet.
I'm on point with things.
Again,
But
I'm asking for specifics, just trying to get to the narrow end of the funnel, because you're actually making a whole living based off of social media.
Correct.
And it's part of the reason why we're having this conversation,
Yes.
because you're using your abilities to literally earn a living
Yes.
and support
Yes.
your family
Yes.
and do everything else that
Yes.
you need to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, like I said, the income was coming in. I needed to get some kind of direction. I wanted to make sure that I attach myself to banks, and I'll mention Stanbic because I'm obsessed with them now.
You're a brand ambassador
I'm a brand
for them.
ambassador for Stanbic. So it was, I just didn't want my money to sit and be spent. I wanted to be with, be part of networking events, where other women can be able to guide you, legal advice, how do I get loans, how do I get support? Because, and I would digress a bit, when COVID hit, all these events and the money coming in because I'm emceeing, everything shut down. And I remember,
Right, because there was a ban
there was
on public gatherings and events.
And then
Yeah.
you had to find that because my contracts were not in place, people wanted refunds. I was like, oh,
Wow.
I should have put these clothes in there, but quickly I learned.
Refunds, and you've already chowed
And
the
I've already
money.
charged the money in my inside. I've picked shoes, I've paid school fees. So it took a strain on me, and I remember I applied for an empowerment. The government then had put out empowerment and loans, and I did. You know me, I was ready. This was it, and I told myself, this is definitely it. So I applied, and I didn't get it. I was completely shattered. And and the stress of it all kind of, you know, the babies, my hair was falling out and everything else. So quickly I said, what is, because I'm an opportunist. I will go to a place where there's need and people haven't gotten there yet. And I'll try and see if I can offer something.
Yeah.
And I told myself, I said, if this is building generational wealth, if I'm no longer here, what are my kids going to? They can't be Tisa the trendsetter. Like, I need to have merchandise. Like, people did t-shirts, people did all sorts of things. But I said, let me try and do something I know has worked.
Yeah.
And I made 10 bottles of hair food. Again, I said, I will call it Tisa's Hair. So I had known then, you know, how God works. So when the name comes, I stick to it. I designed my whole logo, and I remember I didn't even have money to put a vinyl on I just made the hair food. And again, it's the family that came and they bought, all the 10 bottles were gone. Yeah. 3 months after my first sale, I resigned. I shot my boss. I said, from my hair food, this is how much I'm making, and this is how much you're giving me. And I know how to, you know, I know how the marketing industry works. I know what production is. I know all those things and costs and everything else. And the profit I'm making is huge. I am onto something. And my boss says, I will let you go.
So you left then to now focus on your hair brand?
On my hair food brand.
How is that going?
It's doing so well. I think last year I had to now convince my husband. I showed him the numbers. I showed him, I said, my friend, you need to stop work. This is now a family.
Really?
Yes.
Are you trying to get him to leave work as well?
He left.
He left?
He did.
So oh, wow. Okay.
He did.
That's inspiring.
He did, and I said, okay, whatever money is, because he's very good with saving,
Yeah.
you know. So I knew that, okay, with the Stanbic thing, he's the one that will get me to put the money in, make sure that you deposit, make sure so I needed him to be there and to just be my right hand. Like the person, my plus one and everything else. So I told him, I said, this is the money I'm making. Yeah. This is what you're getting. But it's taking away your presence. We don't see you, the kids don't see you, and I can't do this on my own. You see, and I was telling him, I said, you see how Indians do it? Yeah. They've opened big, shiny companies and what? Yeah. Let's try it. So that if you know what the ingredients are and how I do it and how I make it, how passionate I am about it, you will see. He could not believe that we were going through that many bottles.
And this is a hair oil and hair food
this
that
is a
you
hair food
made.
that I made.
Like your own hands.
My own hands. I make it from my own home and I package it myself. It cools down. I stick every single bottle that has ever been purchased. It came from my home.
How many bottles in a month do you sell?
About close to, I think every week we go through 20 bottles every week. But
so
then we've seen
that's
obviously
80, right?
Yes.
Okay. And there's constant demand.
There's constant demand
for
it, but then you have to understand the person that bought it has to use it for 3 months. So they can't come back and buy it.
Yeah.
But the customer reviews are the ones that, so 50% of people that come back to get the hair food are return clients.
Okay.
So that kind of works for me.
Yeah. And how easy is it to source what goes into your hair food? Do you get everything locally?
Again, you find that in my emceeing and my networking that I've decided that I should expand. You know, you meet somebody from Ghana, it's like, oh, we've got shea butter, we've got raw shea butter, and this is how you can get it, and this, okay, can I have that? Then you meet other people like, you know, the students in India, it's like, oh, but you can get this oil from. So I've actually, the oils are here, but I have to outsource them because it's cheap and I can get in bulk and it's, yeah,
so it just goes back to the network that you've created.
It's the network because
your
on my own,
presence.
I wouldn't have. Yes, so in Bemba they say you don't know who's going to help you. Yeah. So it's how I made people feel that makes them remember and want to help.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's incredible. Influencer, is that a negative or a positive term for you?
Oh, it can be both.
It can be both.
It can be both.
Tell me about the negative.
It's easy.
Positive, I mean, you've mention all this great stuff that you've managed,
Why
to...
I say it's negative and what's alarming for me is it's the young people, because I'm a mom now and I've got a teenager that very soon, with COVID, we had to
And
let
you're
our
a
kids
mom,
have
by
their
the
phone.
way, who's also very big on, you do bring your kids
Yes, my kids are
onto your
part of,
content
yes,
from time
onto
to
my
time.
content.
Yeah,
And I think
okay.
even when corporate brands, or, majority corporate brands, when they want to engage with me, it's because of that family dynamic that I have and how people know who about my kids. Like the schools, we have a partnership with the schools where my kids go to. It's small little things that are positive when you're an influencer, because you get a lot of perks. There's a lot of, if Tisa has it, I'll have it. If Tisa's kids are going to that school, I'll go to that school. If Tisa is wearing that hair, I will, you know what I mean? So yes, that's the way it is. When it becomes negative is, I know there's this thing that goes around, and it's been there for years, where people discuss how sex sells. You know what I mean? And how women, you look at male influencers, they will make so much noise for bringing down another woman because she's not dressed a certain way, because she had this scandal. Now, I am all for growth, and I am all for, when I know better, I will do better. So you find Kim Kardashians, and I'll throw that around. It was a sex tape first, and then she built the brand on top of that. And then suddenly you have women who feel they need to not really undress, but to be a little less intelligent and a bit more see who I am, and this is how I look, and this is how I dress. And then when you find, half the time, the female social media influencers, it's only after all the noise, then you realize, wait a minute, is she in law school? Is she studying medicine? You know what I mean? It's like you get to know who they are later on, but that's not what they bring out in the beginning. Now that's very dangerous, because when people see you and you inspire me, people don't know that we all have textures, we all have layers, we all have a story to tell. And you can't fault the influencer to say, oh, now you have 300,000 followers, so now you must behave. It really has to do with upbringing at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Where do you come from? Who are you? Because as much as I was exposed and I went to these amazing schools, cultural heritage was such an important thing for me. I was more Zambian away from Zambia than you know what I mean? I learned how to play drums. I learned how to do all those things. So you come back and you look at culture, and you look at marriage, and you look at submissive, and you look at all these things, and you say, I'm a trendsetter. So how do I then package my content and my information without people saying, oh, she was influencing us, but now she's influencing that other side? You know what I mean? So it's a battle. But the negative influence especially is when the children have to watch and have to be inspired, but what isn't true. So now, instead of bashing the influencers that are putting, we can't have that much control. We try to speak, but be responsible, but it's putting bread on their table. It's now my duty to teach my kids that this is what you must follow, and I need to equip them. I can't be frightened that the world will swallow them. I need to equip them of how they can fight through and know what's wrong from right. If it doesn't make you comfortable, you don't need to follow it because a group of friends are following it, because we will be tired. And when you look at social media and what excites young people, it's worrying. It's really, really worrying.
Before I let you go, just to any young person that is looking at pages with huge followings, huge numbers, perhaps even like a page like yours, and they're thinking, that's the life I want. I want to be famous, I want to be popular, I want a big audience. What would you say to them? What is your word of caution and advice?
I always say, as
just
much
look
as
into that camera.
Is it this camera? Okay. As much as I would say, be careful who influences you, you really have to narrow down what your passion is. You can't really think, I want to be Tisa the trendsetter, I need to have 4 kids. You know what I mean? So what if you struggle with fertility? What if you don't find your soulmate? Because everyone's like, oh, we love your husband, like if God can give me a man like yours. People need to understand that they need to have self-identity. Who are you and who do you want to be? Then align yourself with people that share your dreams. Ask questions. Then narrow it down, have a tunnel vision, and get to that place using the methodologies that work without having to lose yourself. I hope that makes sense.
It absolutely does. Tisa, it's been lovely having you.
Oh, thank
as
you so
always.
much.
Thank you so much for taking us through your journey and just showing us that, you've managed to turn what started initially, like you said, as a point of shame. You've managed to turn that around.
Correct.
And build a brand that you've not only monetized, but it's also led you onto a path of, building a legacy for your
Correct.
family through your hair food brand.
Yes.
And we can only wish you, all the success going forward.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for making the time. And just to, sign off on today's Truth and Tea, I just want to say that one thing that I learned is it's always important to stay in the middle ground of truth. Every time you veer onto an extreme end of the road, you fall into a pit. So social media, as much as it's got its positivity, it's got its influence, it's got its power, there also is the downside to it. But the only way that you're able to strike a balance is stay in the middle ground of truth. Know who you are and stay true to that. We always filter everything through faith here, so it's been a faith-filtered conversation. Do catch us again next week. Don't forget it's Wednesdays at 7 p.m. on Radio Christian Voice, and do catch the YouTube uploads on the Urban Evangelist and Radio Christian Voice platforms. Thank you so much for watching and tuning in.